Hello, it's Doug from Behind Closed Doors, and today I'm looking at Jordan Peterson talking about agreeableness in sexual selection. Let's get into the video.
So I want to spin something off sideways from that just momentarily. Men are less agreeable than women. It's a reliable personality difference. It's only about 60-40. So if you picked a man and a woman out of a crowd and you tried to figure out who was least agreeable, if you bet on the man, you'd be right 60% of the time. That's not that much, but it's not nothing. It means all the really disagreeable people are men, right, out at the extremes. Okay, so, and women actually like disagreeable men more than agreeable men. So there's a preference, which is why we're like that, because women are powerful agents of sexual selection, and they decide that that's how disagreeable men should be. Why?
Well, I think the reason why is for protection. Women, like I discussed in another Jordan Peterson video, women are after useful men, and men are useful for protection. So, protection I'm going for. I myself am a very agreeable person. I've taken the Jordan Peterson Big 5 personality test thing a while back, and I think I'm about 80% agreeableness, which is high. So I'm probably more agreeable than most men and most women. And I think that high in agreeableness kind of comes across as the nice guy, providery type. And lower agreeableness comes across as like the bad boy. And so over the years, I've had to learn to become less agreeable by increasing my assertiveness in the way in which I conduct myself, because I'm a very peaceful person that wants to kind of get on. The relationships that I've been in that have been successful have been where the women are more agreeable than I am. So my current partner, I believe, is like 98% agreeable. So although I'm highly agreeable, I'm less agreeable than she is.
Okay, so here's the trade-off, right? The more disagreeable you are, the less empathic and compassionate and polite you are. So the less, in some sense, the less generous, the less concerned with others, the more concerned with yourself and your victories. Okay, so why would women pick men who are more disagreeable than them? Well, that's the Beauty and the Beast problem in some part, right? Now, so you want a disagreeable man, but you want him to be tameable. So it means you don't want him to be so disagreeable he can't be generous and caring and share. But you don't want him to be so agreeable that a psychopath can take him out.
I think this is why women have a dual mating strategy. I honestly think this is where the lover-provider framework comes in. Like in biology, I think it's known as R&K selection. So you want somebody that's a lover that's going to create good, strong offspring that's disagreeable, but then you also want an agreeable man that you can have as a nice guy that's going to be a good provider. So they'll have a baby with one man and they'll settle down with another man because they're two completely different men. It's very difficult to get those two things in one guy. And I think this is why you have, like over here and in America, like over here you have Jeremy Kyle, in America you have like Jerry Springer. All it is birth tests, like who's the father, because the women are sleeping with one guy and settling down with another guy. And that's why sexual promiscuity has always been frowned upon in women, and why virgins were so valuable is so that you could guarantee that your offspring. And recently, since like the 1960s, since with the pill and other contraceptions, and a rise in women's rights, there hasn't been a rise in women's responsibility.
And I mean, this is a technical issue, because, so you might say, so Noah also talked about what happened in one of these cities that set up one of those sort of autonomous zones. The mayor, I think it was, I can't remember the city.
Probably Seattle, was CHOP.
I think, yeah, it was Seattle. It was Seattle. You're exactly right. And the mayor said something like, well, maybe it'll be sort of like a summer of love. It's like, yeah, maybe. But we remember how the summer of love ended, by the way. Yeah. Hell's Angels, biker gangs at the Rolling Stones concert.
Yeah, so another way of looking at it is like a dove-hawk strategy, which is what I read from the book by Donald Hoffman, The Case Against Reality. And that's an interesting read.
So anyways, summer of love. Okay, so everybody's agreeable and they're getting along and they're handing out food, which isn't free, by the way, but is free in the States because we're so efficient, essentially. It's all summer of love stuff. Yeah, but what about the psychopaths? Well, when do they come out? How about at night? So, like, this is naive beyond belief. And there are computer models of this. So if you set up communities of hyper-agreeable people, all they do is share, and, you know, there are daisies growing out of their orifices.
Yeah, that's the dove strategy.
What happens? You throw one shark in the water and everyone gets eaten. Okay, so women have this tough problem because they have to protect their infants, and they can't really do it because they're smaller and they're concerned with their infants. They're occupied.
You see, again, this is probably where I'm a bit controversial. I don't believe that to be the case. When you look at the family court and the amount of mothers that make false accusations about fathers in order to create parental alienation, and the asymmetry in which residency is handed out, and you look at the methods that they go through using reputation destruction in order to get housing and money, and you also put into that Munchausen's by proxy, which is a much bigger problem in society than I think people give it credit for, because nobody wants to talk about it. And the perpetrators of Munchausen's by proxy are usually mothers. I don't believe that society cares enough about children. I think society cares more about mothers than it does about children. And I think as a society, we overestimate how caring mothers are. And we allow them to get away with things that we'd never let a father get away with, or never let another child treat another child get away with. With the rise of feminism, which isn't about children's rights, it's about women's rights. So again, there's no one speaking out for children's rights. If a mother is a perpetrator of a crime against their partner or a child, they tend to get let off. And I think that that contributes to ongoing generational violence.
Need men to guard them.
But men have been replaced by the government and welfare.
Well, that means they need men who can be guards, so that they have to pay a price in agreeableness. The women do. And, you know, sometimes I've seen couples where the man is just so masculine and the woman so feminine that they can't even communicate. Mm-hmm. They're like from different planets, Mars and Venus. They just can't bridge the gap. And so this is a really tough evolutionary problem. It's like, you have to have generosity. You have to have toughness, because you got to keep down the cheaters and the miscreants. They have to be held under control. And you're naive to think that that's not the case. Psychopaths, by the way, psychopaths vary in the general population between about 1% and 5% and seem to stabilize at about 3%. And so that's also a big critique of the leftist notion that hierarchies are nothing but power. Because if that was true, psychopaths would be much more prevalent than they are and way more successful. And what happens is once the psychopaths get past a certain percentage of the population, people wake up to them, and the tough guys stop them.
No, that's not necessarily true either. The way he's kind of phrased that a little bit kind of implied that the psychopaths are primarily men. Because again, female psychopaths tend to get let off the hook, and their psychopathic acts are more socially acceptable.
And like, is that really surprising to anyone? It's like the tough policemen stop them.
Again, I think these are very vague stereotypes. Like, you know, tough policemen stop psychopaths, like we're watching some kind of a Dirty Harry film or something with Clint Eastwood. I don't think the world is like that. I think that the police in a lot of countries are very much more effeminate than he's given them credit for, and they're much more compliant because they want to keep their job and pay their mortgage. So they'll do as they're told, and they're not going to go out on a limb to stop bad guys, so to speak. Because again, a lot of the perpetrators are females. Females use coercive control in behaviour, and they're not going to identify them. So I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think there's a lot more intricacies.
And like, is that really surprising to anyone? It's like the tough policemen stop them.
It depends how you measure it. Again, let's say if you've got an aggressive woman and you've got a military guy or whatever, and they're in family court, it's against the guy.
The tough military guys stop them. There's no such thing as tough guys.
But what can tough guys do to prevent the reputation destruction that women use to express aggression? How is that a fair fight?
And isn't it the case that they're actually tougher than tough women? And so what are we, children here? Or are we going to look at this straightforwardly and clearly?
Yeah.
I don't think it's that clear. To be honest, I don't really know what his point was there. And there's a lot of very simplistic way of looking at things, which is unusual for a talk from Jordan Peterson. it's because he's aware of the complexities of how people interact and such. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about watching that video. I don't know if I've learned anything or if I disagree with him or what. I don't know what the point of that video was, to be honest.